Welcome to Archean, episode 2 of the Cargo Challenge. So in the previous episode, we did a lot of picking up rocks and built out our initial base with a ore miner and a crusher. So at this point, and we're still crushing some of the excess rocks we had before we built the crusher. Here I'm kind of checking the progress of the crusher and the miner because we started mining early. So what I'm doing is I'm going ahead and grabbing all these rocks. There seems to be some type of unit of 4 rounding going on, probably a timing issue because all this is running asynchronously. So right now it's caught up. So as the ore is mined, it goes ahead and crushes it. So I took the excess and I'm just going to I'm just kind of playing around with that group of 4 there and why it's there. So now it's gone. So it's just sort of some fractional bit. And here we have the ore building up. We'll end up with quite a bit of excess silicon, which is, I guess, a big chunk of it can be used for making concrete. Just sort of grabbing some of the processed ore and throwing it in my inventory. Currently, there's no real weight limit for your inventory. There is a item count limit. You can only have so many items in your inventory. If you run in creative mode, the your backpack will have more spots for items. Dumped in the water here to refill my suit water container and keep that local crushing going. Now I could just go ahead and turn off the miner and let it crush, catch up on the crushing. Probably just wasting time doing it in my suit at this point. So the next problem we have is power. And that battery we have is only got about 45 minutes left of runtime. Now in that duration, it will mine a ton of ore and break it down. So that'll last quite some time, enough to make probably 100 batteries if we had to. But we needed to generate power. So at this point, for early game, there's 2 solutions. There's solar and there is geothermal. Solar has the obvious issue of not working when it's at night, and you want to add tracking to make it more efficient to track the sun as it crosses over. Geothermal has a requirement of a water input to run, and thus, since we're right next to the water here, it's pretty simple to set up a geothermal system and bring the water in. Here I am creating a trash can. So the trash can is your mechanism for getting rid of items. So in this case, I'm going to get rid of the rake tool. There is no currently any deconstructor that allows you to rake down a component back down to its elements and reuse them. And since I really don't need the rake, since we're mining, I'll just toss that in there. Now you can't actually put a connection between in the conveyor system directly into a trash can if you want. So for example, let's say you're collecting just way too much silicon. You could put a conveyor unit attached to the output or one of the connections of the container and filter it just on silicon, and it'll just pull everything out, all the silicon out, and dump it into the trash can, and it's gone. Now we don't want to do that with all the silicon. With a little automation, you can read the contents of the container, and if it contains too much of a particular item, just program a conveyor unit, set the filter to automation, turn it on, let it run until the amount of material in the container drops below some given threshold, and you turn the conveyor unit off. You can also then, of course, reprogram it for other items if you wanted to. So here I am kind of scoping out the area where I'm going to put the geothermal units in. I'm going to build 4 units and connect all to a single small steam turbine. Kind of looking at what I have. I kind of try to sort the constructed components down at the bottom so it's easy to find. So now we go to the big construction sequence of building all this out. Now, anytime I'm sort of standing here playing with the crafter, the suit crafter, I'm going to speed up the video. So I'm running right now. We're running at 5x. I don't want to skip over it because I still want to kind of show the whole process, what's going on, but I figured to make it a little faster. So now we're going to actually, what I need to do is just going to extend this out a bit. Yeah, it's always weird. I always think the wall can be, I can build more walls to additional walls, but you can only build walls off of frames. The boundary of the water is interesting because if you're below the boundary, you can't reach up. Like I can't reach up. I have to be above the water here to actually select anything or touch anything. So I have to start above the water, and then once I get it going, I can drop down under the water. I'm making a little platform so I can attach a fluid port so I can bring water in. Still working on my technique for making blocks. So I'm getting better at this with practice and kind of realizing how the whole thing kind of works. It is deeper than I really need to be, just a little bit. The water doesn't go, there's no tides in the game. I guess because the moon is synchronized with the earth at this time in history. So what I'm doing now, I'm playing around with the port location. What I want is the pipe to come straight through and not have a weird bend in it. That's nothing to do with functionality, just me kind of playing around. So you see some more constructing at 5x. And so we're making a bunch of stuff. We need fluid junctions. And this design, fluid junction has 4 inputs or output depending on how you have it set up. And because of that, that's the reason why I'm only going to build 4 geothermal units, because it has 4 inputs. Now, the max you can have for one small steam turbine is 10 geothermal units. And in that case, you would probably have to daisy chain I guess you need 3 of them. And you get away with 3 fluid junctions for the input, and then you would need 3 more for the output and set all that up. What I want to do is just get initial 4 going, so we have power coming in, and then we can always extend it, expand it later on. Here I am just kind of just playing around with the positioning, and sometimes you can't really line up like a junction directly to the unit. And I think the best thing is just not try to get it perfectly aligned, but maybe offset it a bit so it looks like it's. And here I am trying to get that line up so I can move it over 2 and a fraction. So the fraction, you hit X, you do half a cube here. So I'm going to pop this off and move it over 2 and a fraction, 2.5, actually, not a fraction. There you go, 1 there, 1, 2. Yeah, it's not long enough, so we'll just stick it there. I'm spending way too much time with this. Okay, so I got it right. And then we're going to put 1 more on the right and 2 more on the left. So we'll start with this one and connect it over. I don't spend too much time at this point getting the perfect conduit layout. I might muck around a little bit so it's not so bad. And this is for the output. So basically we accumulate up to the outputs of 4 geothermics into 1 unit. And then we'll throw the steam turbine over here. Now it's very critical, the geothermic units have a 1/2 meter distance between their placement and the terrain. And since I'm putting on top of a 1/4 meter platform here, half that distance already consumed. So I only have a 1/4 of a block, or a full block, or 1/4 of a meter underneath this platform to the terrain for this to work. So if you get a little too close to the shoreline there, you'll see there's a gradual, curvature to the water line. And I have placed geothermic units a little too close, or a place where it kind of curves in a little too much. And the geothermic unit just doesn't work. There's no error, there's no issue, it just doesn't work. And so you just basically, I kind of move them in like a lot. In this case, this little area is kind of flat for that. The other concept I had is just, instead of putting on the platform, put on one below, put like a side mount and then mount it to the side. I think I haven't actually tried that yet, but I figured with like a little side wall I attach it to the wall, I can put it down right against the terrain. So if it's a little iffy on the depth there, I can just do that. But here it's flat enough and wasn't a problem. Yeah, this is kind of a bad layout for the power. So the power, obviously the generator there, run the power back to the battery. And we're gonna get this for it. That one just went inside. I'm not really, probably should read the little help messages, and it sure there's a better way of laying out these pipes. It's nice, but we can always redo this later. We're gonna go for okay with functionality. Now these things consume 1 kilowatt of power each, so we have to run low voltage to each one, and we need some method to turn them on. That can be through a computer or through a switch. I'm going to use a switch here, and because we have 4 of them, we'll just use our we'll use a data junction and a low voltage junction, so the power of 4s work out. So we can put one switch on the data junction and run that to each of the units, and flip one switch and they all come on, or opposite, they all come off. And save the same with the low power. We'll just run low power to the junction, bring one cable over from the battery supply, and put 1 power to each one. Now this does mean when you first turn them on, you're a net negative power generation, because you not have enough. It hasn't gone, basically it starts drilling down, and once it hits a certain depth, it starts getting hot. And as it gets deeper, it gets hotter and hotter. And the steam turbine works, the higher the delta, the more efficient it runs, and of course the more fluid flowing through it, the more it generates. So I'm tapping off, and that's kind of why I set those up, those low power junctions before, because I know I need that cable coming across here. And so we see it's mining. So if you have it in the wrong place, you will see it's not. You will not get that indication that it's actually drilling. So right now it's drilling, and if you look at our generator, we're getting nothing. With both the mining drill and the crusher running, the 4 geothermic units running at full bore at the max 1,000 meters is not enough power to keep both those running. It does have enough power to keep either one running and charge the battery, and of course if you turn them off, you'll definitely charge the battery up. I'm not sure what the threshold is. Maybe 5 would do it, keep up with it, but I can only mine so much. I mean, right now I'm generating more material than I can possibly do anything with, at least in the short term here. And I said I can always I'm running them now. I can always turn those off for charging, which I will do at some point. Once I realize I have way too much, and so and do that. And obviously you can automate all this, have, smart logic in there and turn it on, turn it off, and things like that. But right now we're just getting things started up. So the first stage we got crushed ore. Now the next stage we want some power coming in. I don't really even mess with solar. I think you should probably make solar more viable, more interesting. There's probably a lot more bounce going on, or at least make the geothermal units more difficult to build. I think that's probably better. Right now, they just require common ore to construct, and I think there should be a reason to set up solar panels early on, and then sort of like transition from solar panels over to geothermal. Now, there's actually water vapor in the atmosphere, and so it's actually possible to extract that water vapor and use that for input. So if you're like far away from a water source, that would work. Unfortunately, that device, which I forget the name, requires ores that are not common, so it would not something you can build early on if you're like away from the coast. But for some reason, like, well, it wouldn't work on the moon because there's no water in the atmosphere. The other concept, could you do a closed loop? So you bring in have a water tank, for example, and you heat that up, run into the turbine, you collect the output. So right now, the output, if you notice the output vent, I just venting any output into the atmosphere. I don't actually save that. And the question is, could you just, round robin, take the output from the steam turbine, run into a tank, have the tank run back into the input. It goes round and round. And I think I haven't tried it. It might work now. And but to make the tanks require aluminum, which we don't have yet. Those are up in the it's a common in the hills, so it's not that hard to find, but we want to make a vehicle so we don't have to hike way over there to those ranges. And they're actually further away than they look. I've actually tried like running that way. And you keep running and running in the mountains. It takes a while. It's much better off building. But even a vehicle running flat out, it takes a little bit to get over there. All right, so I got 2 running. And we'll sort of just keep, as we build them, we'll just add them. I'm going to speed this up a little bit, and we're moving around. Staring at the stuff. You notice there's not much oomph in here. I think it gets up to 110 kilowatts once fully running. That works out to, is it 26 or 25? You guys tracked out the 1 kilowatt that they consume. And looks like we got building a lot more up. Now we can make a crafter. And a crafter requires gold, which we have to go down into the sea to get that. You can actually do that manually if you wanted to. In other words, you put a drilling rig and storage and all the other stuff, like a mini mining platform in your inventory, and just go into the water. Start examining rocks, and once you start finding rocks with a little bit of gold in it, which would be a ways out, you can just set up a little mining platform, anchor it and drill away and collect all the rocks. And when you get bored, you get enough gold, and you crush it in your suit, and once you have enough gold, you only like 1 kilogram of gold to make the crafting unit, and then you just come on back and you might luck out and get some uranium. Processing uranium right now takes quite a bit of work, so that's a little bit further off too. All right, get all 4 going. Now we have to wait for these things to reach their max depth. Now these geothermal units, they lock the base. Once you put one down, the base it kind of locks in, and if you if I take that anchor I have for the base and unanchor it, it'll do nothing. I actually can remove the anchor at this point because these units do a sort of a permanent anchor to the base. The only way to remove that is to go through and disassemble the geothermal units. So if you want to make a mobile version of this and drive to some area and have them, you know, attached, one, you'd have to be very close to the ground. So, but you could, you know, use a track system and lower them down to the ground. But once they lock in, you would have to manually disassemble them. So it's not really something you can really automate. Now the other big power source is nuclear, and that gives you a lot of oomph. That requires a lot more specialized ores from top of the mountain and deep down the ocean. And you can put that in even on a ship or technically a very large aircraft, I guess, for power. But that's don't think I actually need nuclear power for this challenge. All right, so what you see I'm doing here, I'm actually building, starting to build wheels. I'm building items I'll need for building a vehicle. So I'm doing some of that building now. Basically because I got the power supply up a little faster than I needed to, so I figured I would pad out the video a little bit with instruction. So this is running at 5x right now. The rest of the video will be 5x. All I'm going to do for the rest of this video is look at my battery and my stuff and see how it's charging. I'm going to look at the generator and the geothermal. They're still coming up to speed, so they're still drilling down, and then I'll just sit here and do some mining. The goal of this series is not do anything off camera. So basically all the construction, all that stuff will be done here. That includes no blueprints or whatnot. All right, so this is about this is the end of this video, episode 2. And episode 3, we're gonna build a small little vehicle, and we're gonna program it and test it live during the video. And we need that so we can go hunting for aluminum. That vehicle will have a built-in drill on it and anchor on it, so we can go take it up the mountains and drill for some aluminum. Until next time, see ya.